4, 3, 2, 1. Go. Are we going to get started? I'm pretty sure we're going to get started soon. Seems like the sound is working just fine. Amazing. Good morning, friends. We need to get hobbies, and we need to get them today. That's what we're going to talk about in today's podcast. Thanks for dropping by, saying hi. If you're dropping by and saying hi, let me know in chat. Say hello. Amrits, of course I remember you. That's been like half a year or whatnot, maybe even longer, maybe even a year. How have you been? I hope you're doing all right. And I hope life is treating you well where you are. You keeping up with the sports and with everything that you set out to do in that time. It's good to see you back on the channel. Thanks for dropping by. This is actually my podcast, and in this podcast we talk about different topics related to health, fitness, and longevity every day while I make my coffee. It's about 15 minutes, and that usually comes after my morning training. But I didn't do any training today because I'm still recovering from that cold. I'm feeling slightly better, but not well enough to actually do any kind of training. You can also tell I'm wearing glasses, which is something that I usually only do when I, am a bit lazy because I have a cold and I'm sick. I'm doing good. How are you? I'm happy to hear that you're doing good. I'm doing all right, besides the cold that I'm trying to get over as quickly as possible. I'm doing all right, actually. I keep showing up every day to do the work. My work is going fine. I'm healthy. The family is doing well. Everyone's growing. Everyone's doing fine. Life is good. I live in relative peace and quiet, and I get to do the things that I want to do unbothered and unconstrained. So I think overall, I have very little to complain about. Just the daily grievances with life and frustrations with an untidy house or something that needs to get done around the house here. I think that's pretty average and pretty normal. What about yourself? I am really happy to see you and hear from you, actually. Though I can't really see you, but I think you understand what I mean. So I hope everything in general is going well for you too. And I appreciate you dropping by. It is Friday, and on Friday we talk about mastery and hobbies and why that is important in the bigger scope of longevity. So usually I talk about today's training, and we talk about hobbies and mastery, and then we talk about one small change. But since I didn't do any small training, any kind of training today, because have been ill and I'm still recovering, as you probably can hear, and I might actually have to go off screen to sneeze a couple of times during the recording, but I think we'll survive. We're going to dive right into the topic, but not before I give you the lay of the land, right? Why do I find these things important? Why am I so vested in longevity? Well, there are two main reasons, right? First of all, if we look at all of the statistics, we are living longer, but we're not staying healthier. That means that I might get to the wonderful age of 75, 80, 85, maybe even 90, maybe even 95, even though that's reasonably unlikely. But the more of those years I get, the more of those years I'm actually going to spend with discomfort and disease, trying to make life work while taking medication or being incapable or being limited in my mobility, strength, or ability to move around. Apparently, there are a lot of lifestyle changes that we can make early on in life that may help us reverse, prevent, or delay the onset of those kinds of detrimental diseases and discomforts. And that is what I am particularly interested in. This is very straightforward. I would like to be as healthy and as active for as long as possible in life. Does that make sense? All right, that's one goal. The second goal is I have 2 young kids. I would like to, am I reading this from Google? No, I am actually not reading this from Google. This is stuff that I've learned over the last years by being interested in the topic. CK, thanks for dropping by, saying hi, and I hope you're doing well where you're at in the world. And I hope that life is treating you well wherever you're at. And I appreciate you dropping by, saying hi, and asking the question. Probably Googling was a part of the research, but I also did some training in personal training, a certified personal trainer, certified lifestyle coach, and you see a lot of statistics in in light of those certifications and trainings. And the truth really is that we're getting older, but we're not actually staying healthier over time. At least that is the current status. Maybe things are changing. The other reason is I have 2 young kids, and I would like them to, let me know if that answers your question or not, because I really appreciate you leaning in and asking me about it. And I would like to be an active part of their life now. I would like to be an active part of their life as they grow up. But I would also like to set a good example of what a healthy and active adult life actually looks like. And to show them, you know, what kinds of levels of activity, how I treat sleep, how we develop food habits already from a young age in terms of what we eat, what we don't eat, what we try to limit, what is healthy, what is best taken in moderation, what is going to keep us fit and going for a long time, how we build friendships and connections, how we have and maintain relationships, how we do things just as hobbies for ourselves, to grow in our skill set, to grow in our focus, to grow in our sense of self-worth, competence, and to put a good example out there for them that they can either emulate or turn away from, depending on how they develop as teenagers. But I think you get the idea. So those two goals taken together, for me, come together in a couple of things. One, every day for 30 minutes, I try to do some sort of training. That could be strength training, endurance training, mobility training. I usually live stream that. And the last 2 days I haven't because I'm ill. Maybe you can hear it, I'm a bit short of breath also this morning. That's just a part of having a common cold. Probably 2 more days and then it's going to be completely gone, so I'll probably feel a lot better tomorrow. Then I also talk about, or I'm very interested in sleep, nutrition, movement, just general activity, community contribution, connection, and hobbies and mastery. And those are the things that I talk about in the podcast. If you strive to become a UFC fighter, for example, invest in something, the way you say help out, no, I don't think so. I think you'd have a very different set of goals and a very different rhythm to life, which is why I always mention my goals at the top. I think if you are trying to reach the top of any kind of sport or any kind of competitive activity, that brings with it a lot of focus, a lot of mastery, but it also brings with it a very rigorous schedule in terms of sleep, food, and training, but the types of training, types of foods, and probably the sleep regulation would be more geared towards that high performance than towards general living, although I think you could learn a lot from that process in terms of what it takes to get to peak performance, and then see how that translates into living a long and healthy life. But I think people can be very fit and perform at a very high level, but not be getting healthier and healthier. It's a great question, and that's why it's important to start with goals. Nice knowing you. Have a great rest of your day. Sleep now. See you soon. Thanks a lot, Amrit, and I really appreciate you dropping by. It's good to hear that you are doing well, and you get a good night's sleep, rest well, and have a great day tomorrow. Thanks, friend. Can I become the best It's hard to say, CK. It's a great question. Like I said, generally there is a divide between training and peak performance and long-term health, even though athletes tend to be healthier over time, maybe because of their habits. Not entirely sure what the research says there. But at the moment that you are performing at that peak, the focus is getting the most out of your body under very extreme circumstances, right? Um, Whereas health is focused on um, maintaining function, improving strength, cardiorespiratory fitness, bone mineral density, um, within healthy parameters, not at elite levels, but just staying as fit as possible. So I'd say there's probably a difference there. It's an interesting question, but in my understanding today, that's how I would split those up. I'm not saying you're unhealthy as an elite athlete, but I think the focus of the training and the interventions is very different. Oh, that's a very good question. I think you need to define that for yourself, um, just like I've defined it for myself, and that's why I talk about these 5 topics, right? So I talk about sleep, I talk about food, I talk about movement, I talk about, let's call it purpose through community, connection, contributions, and mastery through hobbies and skills that we want to learn. I think in general, the way I read it and the way I understand it is that there are certain markers of health that we have. I think one of the key ones apparently is cardiorespiratory fitness is a good predictor of the risk we have at any time, of whether or not we are going to die prematurely or not. But they're risk indicators, right? There's always life and fate, so to speak. I would say you could do everything right, and still tragedy could befall you. And there's nothing you can do about that. I think the choice we have to make is which of the science do we choose to adhere to, and which of the science do we disregard in favor of other things. And for me, just out of my own experience, it's become very clear that if I sleep between 7 and 8 hours a night, I do a lot better. No, to fear death would be unwise and unproductive. Life is finite, and I think that's a part of living and making the most of it. If I don't sleep 7 to 8 hours a night, I probably I don't feel as good as when I do sleep 7 to 8 hours a night. And when I look at what I know about sleeping, the sleep science that's out there and that's available, there are some interesting insights about what happens when I sleep less or more or that amount of time. So that seems like a reasonable logic to follow to try to sleep between 7 and 8 hours. When I look at food, I know from own experience what happens when I overeat, when I over-index on junk, when I eat a lot of greasy, hearty, salty, fatty foods. I know what happens when I manage my energy intake well. And I have been on both sides, and I've been going up and down in between, and I've been relatively steady for the last 2, maybe 3 years. So I can see that there is definitely something to do about food in terms of my current health, but apparently there's also a lot to learn about food and how it affects health in the long term, which is something that I'm interested in. The same goes for movement. There is apparently a minimum threshold for movement. There's doing too much, there's the risk of injury, and there are different modalities of movement and training and exercise that have different effects on my physical ability, health, and fitness. And I've chosen a couple of those modalities that give me a general sense of feeling good. And if I look at the markers that are set out. So I did a VO2 max test a year and a half ago with all of the blood work. There were things that were all right, and there were things from which the doctor said, well, maybe these could be improved a little bit, which is what I'm working on. So, I look at all of those different factors, and then I make my own strategy, and I talk about it on the channel in the hope that people also discover what works for them, and maybe through my experience. CK, you are very welcome, and I appreciate you dropping by and asking the questions and having the conversations. And it's always fun to actually get questions because it helps me think things through as well, and helps me better understand my position and why I think the way I do. The next Z, thanks for dropping by. Yo, I hope you're doing well where you're at in the world. We're talking about health, fitness, and longevity. Specifically today, we're going to talk about hobbies. I'm going to explain very quickly why that is one of the 5 areas that I consider to be important when it comes to health, fitness, and longevity. So CK, I hope that all answered your questions, and maybe there's some insight there for you. Maybe you have some insights from your own experience that you want to share with me so that I can further my thinking as well, right? So why do I focus on hobbies? Well, let's look at life. Life has a lot of demands, commitments, and responsibilities. That is just the way life is structured. And that is not a bad thing. I think it gives me a sense of purpose to have a job that I want to do well. It gives me a sense of purpose to have to show up with my kids at different sport events or have them at school in time. I think it also helps us all function, be busy, and be productive members of society, right? But when one part of our life isn't going well, so let's say we're struggling in our job, if our entire identity is wrapped up in that one thing, we don't have anything else to fall back on to make us feel good about ourselves, to make us feel competent, to make us feel like we're able and capable and have the potential to learn and grow. And I learned this actually during COVID because I got a bit interested in resilience, because that was like, mentally just incredibly taxing and hard, right? But I learned that generally it is good to have multiple domains in which we develop some sort of competence, joy, pleasure, ability, because when we're struggling in one, being good at the other actually gives us a confidence, motivation boost by reverting to that hobby or that activity that enables us to push through and perform better or learn what's necessary in the other, because the knowledge that we can learn and grow from one domain about ourselves, right? The knowledge that we as a person can develop, learn, grow, get better at things that we're not yet good at. There's a sneeze coming. Sorry. This is why streaming with a cold is not a good idea, right? I'll probably have to edit that out. But that helps us actually grow in things that we struggle with. So we're always going to be good at one thing, struggling with another, and then over time, right? The pendulum swings, we struggle with one thing, we're really good at the other thing. We keep going up and down between those two. It is good to have something to turn to just to distract us from life a little bit. It is very helpful. It is very good for us. It helps us actually. Maybe deal with the stresses of life better. And having something that requires focus and skill maybe practices our motor skills, right? If we're doing very fine penciling or needling or putting very small mechanical parts together, or if it's programming, right? If we're writing computer programs, with AI, maybe those things are changing, but still the skill and logic of programming is very valuable to learn because it's a way of thinking. The focus that that brings to our mind and the ability to then actually, be completely in a state of flow can be very helpful for resetting our stress levels, our focus, our frustrations. So there are a lot of benefits to developing those kinds of hobbies for ourselves. Okay, so we understand the benefit of that, right? It doesn't really matter what it is. What matters the most is that we have something and that we dedicate some time to it. So the small change that we're going to make this week, right? The small change that we're going to make this week is that we are going to try to find 15 minutes in the week, not every day, but at one point in the week, 15 minutes to sit down with a hobby. That's something that we would enjoy. That could be building complicated Lego constructs, or that could be painting, or that could be creative writing, or that could be playing chess, or that could be reading a book, or that could be learning something about nature or biology, any kind of hobby that you can think of, knitting, the art of making tea, learning the Japanese tea ceremony. There are many different things that we could learn, right? We're going to pick one, and every week we're going to spend 15 minutes on it, whether it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. That's up to you. But I want you to pick something and try to become really good at it over the course of time with 15 minutes a week, whatever that is. And you'll see that there's different phases to learning something new. There's a bit of anxiety, but also excitement about starting something new. There is the initial learning curve where things are really easy. And then there are some plateaus that we hit where things get harder and harder. And then there is, a gradual kind of rolling into it and seeing our skill level and interest in it increase, but also being able to take on more complex tasks or challenges within that hobby over time, over and over again. 15 minutes every week, small change we can try to make, and let's see where that fits in to our week. Thanks for dropping by, friends. Amrit, CK, the next C. I hope you're well where you're at. I hope you have a good day, good night's sleep, depending on where you are in the world. And I appreciate the conversation and you chiming in and saying hi. Remember to hit like, subscribe to my channel if this is something you're interested in. We're good just the way we are. We've got to love ourselves before we can move on. It's the person we are today who's going to get us to where we want to be tomorrow. And a bit of kindness is going to go a long way. There are a lot of people out there who want to put us down, so we lift ourselves up. I'm here usually every day, streaming a workout, or recording a podcast on any of the topics of life and longevity. If you want those updates, go ahead, hit like and subscribe. And remember, friends, the only way to get anything done is by showing up and doing the work. So I'll see you, hopefully, tomorrow. And don't forget, friends, subscribe.